everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Vint Podcast. My name is Brady, and I'm joined, as always, in the studio with Billy Galenko, albeit virtually. Billy, how you doing?
Doing very well. How are you today, Brady?
I'm doing okay. It's been really mild weather out here, which is nice because, one, it's been in the 70s and not super humid, plus our house is kind of in a really shaded neighborhood, and so it's been really nice to be outside and be on walks and stuff. This work from home can get difficult if you're inside all day. Plus, it's almost miserably hot to go out, but it hasn't quite gotten there this time of year in the East Coast.
I got a taste of East Coast heat when I was back in Virginia Beach for Father's Day, and one day it got up to like 104, and it was just for a little while. I'm not sure. I guess the breeze off the ocean was gone, but man, I do not miss that humid heat.
Yeah, I've extended family on my wife's side in Georgia, and the heat index was like 117 last week. So that's pretty brutal. But things have been heating up at Vint as well. Over the last week, we've had 3 different collections sell out. We had our Domaine della Romani Conti horizontal collection, which was a $53,000 total value collection. That offering sold out last week. We also had our Screaming Eagle offering, which launched earlier this week, as in 2 days ago, I guess, when this episode goes live on Monday. It was a $131,000 collection, and we sold that collection out in less than 24 hours. And kind of on the back of that collection, our Germany offering, which had been on the website, on the platform for some time. It was also a $53,000 collection, also sold out. So right now, if you head over to the Vint collections page, you'll see our white burgundy collection, a longstanding offering that has been on the site for some time, is at 92% sold out as of recording. We still have 346 shares remaining at $30 per share. This is an offering that we've talked about a lot of different times on the Vint podcast, even gone in depth a few different times. It's a collection of predominantly white wines. We're able to get excellent pricing on these wines. It represents some of the top white Burgundies, white wines in Burgundy, featuring Domaine della Romani Conti, Montrachet in that offering as well. So if you did miss out on our last Domaine della Romani Conti horizontal collection, you can pick up a collection that features some of those wines from the DRC label, but also a super rare collaborative collection among some different producers in Burgundy that also features Domaine della Romani Conti juice. Yeah, aside from our collection selling out, we're continuing to evolve our product. We've had good feedback from folks on our new website, including new collection pages and home pages. So thank you all for your feedback. Head over to the platform and check those things out if you have not. On the back end of this episode, we have an exciting interview with Jordan Ogron, who is a restaurateur and wine shop owner in West Hollywood. Billy will give a little bit more extensive of an intro, but we're excited to share that interview with you all at the end of the episode.
Yeah. And then building on more excitement, we also had an article come out featuring Adam's announcement. So Adam, as we mentioned a couple episodes ago, our new director of wine, we got a Decanter had an exclusive announcement of his coming on, and has a great quote from Adam. And that's been great to see that article be featured on their homepage over this past weekend. So we're really excited to have Adam on, and keep looking for Vint in the news because we keep popping up.
Yeah, and this, the kind of increased attention around our collections as we've grown too, I think has been nice to see as different alternative asset platforms, pick up profiles on our offerings as they come out. And as we've continued to increase the cadence by which our collections come out, which we'll, continue to do now that Adam is on, I think we'll be seeing a lot more Vint in the news, and which is always nice to have positive media out there and really engage our community.
Yeah. And then always, if you ever see us in the news, pass it on to your friend, because that always helps us. Every little bit counts. Yeah. So circling back a little bit for our interview today, Jordan is someone who I got connected with through a collector out here in Los Angeles. And he runs an awesome restaurant called Tess, and a bottle shop that's connected called Bottier. And he told us a really cool story, and he'll kind of go into it too. But I didn't know that Bottier is kind of the partner back in the day to the role of the sommelier. The Bottier guy was kind of the cellar keeper in the house, which I thought was really interesting. He kind of manages keeping the wine safe, and then the sommelier brings the wine and serves it. So I thought that was a fun fact. He goes into a little bit more detail in the podcast. But did you know that before the podcast, Brady?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I always think it's really cool when brands have stories like that behind their name and little tidbits that you don't know about. So yeah, that was awesome to hear, and that creativity is if I had a shop, that's exactly what I'd be going for.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're just going to keep it short and sweet for this intro this time. So enjoy our interview with Jordan here. We'll cover everything from his favorite wine regions to how he chooses wines for the restaurant to kind of trends and things that he's seeing going on in the wine world. So enjoy our interview with Jordan Ogron. Hi, Jordan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Billy. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Really excited to have Jordan on. I've been in touch with him for a number of months now. I've had many good times at his restaurant tests, and then he helped us acquire some of the bottles that we tasted with Channing and Jacob up there in Willamette Valley. So we're really excited to have you. First, let's start with, how did you get into wine originally? Has it been through the restaurant and retail channels at first, or how did you make your way into the industry?
Well, I don't think anyone ever chooses to be in this industry. You kind of just fall into it in a way. My dad was a prominent lawyer. I grew up in Vegas, and, we were fortunate enough to be able to go out to nice dinners when I was younger. And, growing up in Vegas, you're around a lot of wine, a lot of somms, down on the strip. And so I grew up, seeing my dad, drink some good Napa Cabs and some good Bordeaux's. And I've always been around wine, funny enough. So it's like a second language to me, almost. I'm not a trained sommelier. I don't even like the word, to be honest. I think it's just a little pretentious. A lot of people would disagree with that, but that's just my personal feeling. It's just a real passion. I used to be an opera singer, traveled the world doing that. And it's just, that was not the best lifestyle. And so I decided to tackle my other passion in food and wine.
You might be surprised to hear you're not the first former opera singer we've had on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's Master Sommelier. I know you don't like sommelier. David Keck has come on. He's actually he's farming some wine grapes up in Vermont now, but apparently he was a opera singer before his wine days as well.
Nice.
There's definitely some kind of correlation there. It must be like the character traits, something like diligence, determination, these kinds of things that keep people committed to both opera and wine.
Yeah. Well, they go well together, hand in hand.
Yeah. How did you then make your way, I guess, to LA and then settling in, I guess, working in restaurants and then setting up your own restaurant and shop?
Yeah. So I moved to LA. Well, originally from Vegas, moved to Orange County for high school, and then ended up going to USC, which, left me here in LA, and I love LA, and worked my way through restaurants, being a wine director. Started my career at 20 years old at Rivera, which was a restaurant in downtown across from the Staples Center. And I co-wrote that list in the beginning with a master somm named Steven Geddes, who's a great guy based in Las Vegas. And really just that was a Spanish-driven list and, South American focus list. Really got a lot of my floor training there from my mentor at the time, who was just a phenomenal front of the house service guy. He got his training through the Michael Mina ranks. And from Rivera, it was weird because in my career, I, done a lot of mom and pop style restaurants. And then I've also worked in large corporate companies. I couldn't figure out what I liked more. So when I was younger, I kept going, mom and pop to corporate and back and forth. So I went from Rivera to Fig and Olive, moved to New York for almost 2 years and helped them open a few locations there. And then came back to LA and opened the one over on La Cienega and Melrose. And from there, then went to Bestia, which is kind of my claim to fame as a general manager. It was the first time I had opened a restaurant as a general manager in downtown LA. And still to this day, their 10-year anniversary, I believe, is in November. And it still takes 2 or 3 months to get in there. So I was there for about a year and a half. And after working 6 days a week, 14, 15-hour days, I was the only manager. I just got really tired and decided to go back to corporate for the nice pay raise and an easy work schedule. Went back to New York actually for a year for the Standard Hotel Group and helped them open a restaurant in Soho. East Village, and then came back here and worked for Hakkasan Group and helped them with a few locations here and in Vegas, and just got really tired of the corporate workplace where you feel like you're not heard as an employee and you're just trying to do the best for the company. And so that was kind of my motivation to really own my own business. And so I had called Bill Chates, who's now my business partner, but a gentleman I had worked for since the beginning of my career because he was the owner of or co-owner of Rivera and Bestia. And I called Bill and I said, look, I don't want to work for you, but I'd love to partner with you on a restaurant project. And so that's how Tess was born. Here we are today with a beautiful 4,000 square foot restaurant and another 1,200 square foot wine store called Boutellier that's attached to it that we also use as a private dining room.
Awesome. Yeah, I will say Bestia is still great to this day. I can attest to that. And it does take forever to get in. So kudos on starting that up. But how did you decide to have the bottle shop and the restaurant together? I think that's such an interesting kind of component because, you know, not only does it add space to have extra dinners or private spaces, but I think it actually adds an element to the wine experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of my dreams has always been to have a wine store. I just really love wine and I've always wanted to curate, you know, in a way, my own collection to share with everybody else and kind of my vision of how wine should be sold. And, you know, no matter where you go around the world, for the most part, you know, when you go to a winery, you know, their tasting room or their shop is always so gorgeous. You know, the way that they present the bottles, just every little design detail of a tasting room or a shop at a winery is always just really incredible. And, you know, when you go to your local wine store, like near where you live, some people get wine at the grocery store. Some people go to, you know, liquor stores or small wine shops. And I just don't think that any of those places pay homage to the wines as the winery does, you know, because when you walk into any wine store, for the most part, you know, there's cardboard boxes everywhere and you have stickers all over the bottles. And, you know, it's just the wine is just kind of thrown on a shelf or thrown in, you know, left in the box, thrown on the floor kind of thing. And it's just, I just feel like up until this point that, you know, that I've had my wine store, I just feel like wine is so disrespected after it leaves the winery. So Boutellier is more of an upscale retail experience, you know, kind of like if you were to go to any designer store, clothing store. And there really is not that kind of experience in the world of wine shopping. And so that was kind of our goal with Boutellier. And the word Boutellier was a word that was used in the 17th or 18th century because our logo is a key. And the Boutellier was the guard or the at that time, the gentleman that held the key to the king's cellar. And so the king would tell the Boutellier what he'd want to drink, and he would retrieve it from the cellar and then give it to the sommelier who would pour the wine. So that's how those two words kind of play with each other. And so our logo is the key because I feel like we have a pretty cool collection that, you know, a king from the 17th or 18th century would be, you know, happy to drink. So does that answer?
Yeah, that's really great. I want to lean a little bit more into that idea of elevating the retail experience a bit because, you know, I mean, like you said, the presentation often and it's no dig on local wine shops, but, you know, can sometimes be sloppy and it doesn't help to elevate the customer experience in that way. What particular components have you thought, if you could just maybe name 2 or 3 components that you really focused on? You said, if we can do this right, if we can do this presentation right, it's going to elevate the experience. What were those components?
Sure. So, you know, if you think about your experience when you walk into a Louis Vuitton or a Gucci or any of those kinds of stores, you know, you don't grab the product and go to the counter, you know, very rare. You know, you usually have someone that helps you that, you know, gets everything for you. And so in Boutellier, you know, the wines are presented in a way where they're not laying fully down, but they're angled so that you can see the labels properly. Every single wine in the store has its own wood engraved tag. That is not an easy process because every tag has to be designed on its own, in a design program. And then we send a huge file off to our engraver that uses a laser cutter. And then we really don't want people to have to, we don't have baskets or any way for people to put wine. The point is that they're not supposed to be grabbing bottles. When you go to a grocery store, you throw all the bottles in your cart. It's not that kind of experience. So you have your own personal shopper. We get the bottles for you. We have beautiful reusable bags that people love and use when they take to restaurants. Wine carriers are also something that's not, readily available. So there's not a lot of options for them. So our bags are used as wine carriers. But the experience is, you have someone that shops with you and retrieves the bottles for you. We don't sticker any of the bottles because the barcode that we use is on the back of the wood tag. And it's just really a nice experience as if you were at the winery.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine you have folks that really appreciate that level of the quality experience, but also imagine there's folks that would say that, what you're doing there is just pretentious. What do you say to folks who don't understand the project in terms of the experience that you're trying to create?
Well, the only thing that might come off pretentious is that the wines in our store are a little bit, the median price, I would say, is a little bit higher than normal stores. And that's just because our collection is really about 80% of the wines that we have in our store. And, we have a very large collection, over 1 million bottles, like way over 1 million bottles. Not all in the store, but, just in general. We have about 6,000 different SKUs in the store. But, our collection, our focus on the collection is that these are wines that you can't find anywhere else. And, we have wines that are $15, $16, and we have wines that are, $10,000 to $20,000. But the median average of what's in the store is, probably around $40, $50, $60, somewhere in that range, and when you go to a grocery store, the median average there is probably $10, $15, So, so people might think that it's a little pretentious in that way, but the value is insane because instead of going to the grocery store and buying a current vintage Cabernet for $20 at Boutellier, you can get a 2010 Cabernet for $50 or $45, so you can say it's more expensive, but you get way more quality and value in purchasing stuff from our store. So that's the difference. And people really do love the experience because so many people always want to ask questions about wine, which is great, but they always, I'm sure we've all shopped for wine. We always want to make sure that what we're shopping for, we're going to like it. Right. So, people always ask like, what are the qualities of this? Or I love this. What do you suggest? And they really love the hands-on experience. And sometimes there's not enough people to help all the people in the store, which is, a good problem to have. So
yeah, I like the comparison to Gucci or Louis Vuitton, because you've created this experience that sounds like it's really elevated, but then at the same time, you just said you do have, bottles, $15, $20, $25. And I mean, you certainly can't find a $15 handbag at Louis Vuitton. Right. So I like that you kind of incorporated the experience, but at the end of the day, it sounds like there's still a lot of accessibility.
Oh yeah, no, it's a wine store for everybody. We're just like, I like to say the best kept secret because we don't have an online presence. It's a pure brick and mortar store. A lot of people do know about the store, but not enough. But what we also do is that after you dine inside of Tess, we give you 20% off anything in the store after dinner, which is always a great perk because then you're getting things for even more value than you would just walking in and buying it.
Yeah. And then building on Brady's point of the experience, but also, the range of price points all the way up to the top tier, you're putting some wines on not on a pedestal, but there's equal footing for all of them. So it's like sometimes when you go to a wine store, maybe the nice setup will only be for the, first growth Bordeaux or maybe the Burgundy, but it's really cool to go through your shop and see everything from, of course those wines are there, but there's, nicely aged like Beaujolais, or there's some great Etna Rosso from a really cool producer. I think it's nice to see the lesser known folks that still making amazing wine being put in the same kind of treated the same as some of those names that maybe people know more.
100%. And we also, we give every winery that we carry an equal eye. And what I mean by that is, unlike I think every other store, I don't know any other store that sells wine by grape varietal. Usually it's by region. When you walk in the store, you don't see, California, Bordeaux. You don't see any of that. You see Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. You see Pinot Noir, Syrah and Grenache, Nebbiolo Sangiovese. So, when you're looking at the cab wall, you're seeing Cabernet not only from California, but from Australia and France, because a lot of Bordeaux's are cab based. So that's where we put a lot of, all the cabs go on one wall. So when people are like, well, I only like to drink California cab, but when you see the California cab average is, for a decent one is $50-$60, but you can have this Cabernet from Italy for 25. It's a good thing to see side by side that you usually don't see in other stores.
Yeah, for sure. So on that note, are there any, I'm sure we can kind of frame this in a bunch of ways, but are there any regions that the store focuses on? And then are there any favorites or regions that you feel are underappreciated that you're trying to kind of bring to prominence through Potier?
Well, the store, we have mostly wine from everywhere except for Greece. And it's just because it's not a big market. And I personally am not a big fan of Greek wine, and I don't have anything against it. It just, I've never really gotten into it. And so I don't know much about it. I think I maybe know one grape varietal from there. That's definitely something I need to learn. But my whole career, I've always said that Spanish wine is underappreciated. And it's also still to this day, the best value. And all the time when people come into tests and they're like, I'd like to drink a cab, I usually bring them like a Garnacha from a region called Campo de Borja, which is in between Rioja and Barcelona. And it's always hot there, like Napa. And the Garnachas they produce and the way they make them, it's very difficult to tell the difference between a Napa cab and a Garnacha from that area. And so people are always flabbergasted about how good it is and that it's cheaper than a cab they usually drink. And so I just really think that there are a lot of hidden gems in Spain, killer values, and people that love Pinot Noir, Tempranillo from the Rioja region specifically, that's like the Pinot Noir of Spain is what I always say. The Tempranillo grape offers a different style of fruit than the Pinot Noir, gives off, but I like to say it's an elevated flavor profile of a Pinot Noir. And I just absolutely love Spanish wines. And that's probably because I started my career at Rivera, and that was mostly a Spanish wine list and South American wine list. But I still cannot, I left my heart in Spain the first time I went there. It's just, the wines are just incredible. So, we focus heavily, obviously, on European wines and California. We do have some Australia, New Zealand, Moroccan, probably forgetting like another 10 countries, but no, I mean, we're definitely a worldly store, and I think people are happy with what they see.
Is there a difference, and I'm sure there is, maybe you can describe it, the difference between how you think about purchasing wine for the list at the restaurant now, and then, not stocking the shelves, but building a list for your the retail shop?
Well, yeah. So Tess has a completely separate offering than the wine store. We do that on purpose. So, people don't see wines at different prices, on the wine list and in the store, because it's hard to explain to people why there's an extra markup for wine in a restaurant. So we have a fairly large list, and we focus on, my whole career, I focused on smaller wineries than larger wineries. I don't do a lot of business with Southern glazers or, the big wine conglomerates, as I like to say, that kind of own the market. I like to help the small guys, the small family-owned businesses that produce great cult wines. So that's what we focus on for the most part. And the store is, like I said, we have a very large collection that has been curated, over my lifetime and even before I was born, through family collections, family friends collections. We have a very large warehouse where we age wine. And we have wines in the store going all the way back to 1928, I believe, or 1921, something like that. And it used to be in the late 1800s, but I had a Madeira from the late 1800s that I sold a year or two ago. So, but a lot of what we purchase now in Boutellier specifically is stuff that is not going to be on the shelf, for another 4 or 5 years. So, the way that I've always taught people to properly collect is, if you can't afford it, you buy at least 2 cases of a wine, if not 3, so that you can drink one now, as I like to say, get it out of your system, because always anticipation, it kills, and it makes you want to break that case and open it. So I always say, get 1 case to drink now, get 1 case to put away, maybe to sell later. And the third case is meant to try over time, so open one in 3 years, open one in 5 years, 7 years, or whatever it is. But it's cool to collect that way. And so that's what we do as well. We buy 3 to 5 cases of whatever wine and put it away and see how it ages over time. Obviously, we don't drink 1 case, but we just have to have enough to sell. But we do, every so often taste the wines as they age. And the way that we taste them is through wine dinners that we have in the restaurant. So, we'll put, like, we have a wine dinner coming up in July called the Tour Through France. And we're doing a wine from, Champagne and the Loire Valley. We're doing a Sancerre, and we're doing a Burgundy, a white Burgundy, and then a red Burgundy. We're going to have a Rhone, Chateauneuf, Bordeaux. So, we're going to go all around. And that's how we taste some of our collection, is by, having wine dinners and selling wine that way as well. So it's a lot of fun. And there's the synergy between the test list and the Boutellier offering has always been good, luckily, because it wasn't something that I had put too much thought into before we opened. So it's worked, and I can't complain.
Nice. Do you see collectors coming specifically to you just based on your either selection or the availability of back vintage, that they might either, maybe they have a gap in their collection, or maybe they're looking for something they can drink sooner rather than holding it for 20 years?
We do. We definitely do. Those that know about us, for sure, and wine collectors, they all talk. So over the years, we just celebrated our 4-year anniversary this past weekend. And, 2 years, I guess, if you take away COVID. But over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of different collectors, come in looking for certain things, some of which are almost impossible to find, others that we've had and been able to help them with that. But I love the collectors that come in and they're like, I have 1 bottle of this and I really don't want to open it, but if you have like another bottle or 2, then I want to buy them so I can open one right now. And we just talked about how anticipation kills, and some of these collectors are just itching to open the 1 bottle that they have, but if they can have an opportunity to buy another one, then they don't feel so bad opening it, So we get a lot of that too, which is great to see.
Now, you have the warehouse full collection that is related to the shop, right? Do you have a personal seller, or one that, doesn't see the retail side at all and it's just, for you personally?
Yeah, I do. And I've kind of taken my personal passion and kind of have injected it into Boutellier a little bit. In the lock cellar in Boutellier, we have a back room that has all the high-end stuff. One of the walls we call the birth year wall, because we take pride in having everyone's birth year for wines that were produced and decent. At least, there's some vintages like mine, unfortunately, where it's very, very difficult to find good wine in that specific vintage. And I'm 1987, which, was only a semi-decent year in Rioja and in Napa. And other than that, you're kind of out of luck. So my personal collection is focused on finding a lot of 87s because it's so hard to get your hands on good ones. And then I have, some sentimental wines for whatever reason, stories and stuff that, I have 1 or 2 bottles left that I like to hold on to. And I don't have the largest collection because I'm always focused on, buying for the restaurant and for the store. But if there's something, newer that comes out, like there's a wine called Bizerno that's made by Ludovic Antinori, and it's a fairly new project. And I tried the first vintage, which was a 2016, I believe, or at least the first vintage in the US. I don't know when his first vintage in Italy was, but I just remember tasting that wine, and which is kind of a competitor to a Sassicaia or a Masetto. And it's like a 20th of the value. And I just absolutely just blew my mind. And so, when I taste something like that I've never seen before, never tried before, I'll usually buy myself a case as well and put it away. And so like, that's a perfect example of something I just did not too long ago, because that wine was just shockingly good. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably say I have, 500 bottles. That's about it. Pretty minimal.
Nice. Do you have any favorite producers making up some of that? I know you've mentioned Realm in the past, and you've mentioned Lopez de Heredia.
Yeah. So in Napa, Realm is like the best kept secret. A lot of people come into the store and they ask me for Screaming Eagle or Harlan or Bond, and I love Harlan and Bond. Not the biggest fan of Screaming Eagle for the price, but Realm, especially the Absurd, which is their top wine. I mean, I'll put that up against Harlan or Screaming Eagle any day. I mean, the wine is just incredible. And again, it's expensive, but it's nowhere near the price of Harlan or Screaming Eagle. And that'd be from California. I mean, in Spain, it's like asking me what child do I like more. It's hard to choose. But I mean, I love Lopez de Heredia. I love that family. Maria Jose and Mercedes are just great people, great sisters. La Rioja, it's all on that one road in Aro. There's amazing wineries there. And I have to say that another wine that's from Spain, but not in the Rioja region, it's from Ribera del Duero, is Vega Sicilia, which is it's the king winery of Spain, because that's what the king also drank. But the Unico, that they produce is just miraculous. And again, I would put that up against any of the best wines around the world. Just really incredible stuff that's produced in Spain. And out of Italy, I just talked about it, but Bizerno, it's unreal, just unreal. And they didn't pay me to talk about how good the wine is. I'm just putting that up. Yeah, those are some of my favorites right now.
Do you have any favorite up in like Piemonte or anywhere more in northern Italy?
Yeah, so I actually, I wouldn't say I make it, but I definitely have a say on it, is of a Barolo that we produce, with under the Boutellier logo, with amazing winery called Cascina Adelaide, Adelaide. And Mr. Draco, he's in his 80s now, but the man is just an unbelievable person, so funny. And he really puts a lot of love into his wines. And again, it's a small producer. I think they collectively have about 8 to 10 different labels, and they only make 50,000 bottles, I think, or 100,000 bottles, but total for the whole winery, which is so small. And their wines are just absolutely incredible for the value. And I'm a big value guy, because I think when people shop, I always put my mentality in the hands of, the customer. And, we're all human. We go and we shop for wine, and it's not like we just go and blindly choose, the most expensive stuff. No, we want the best quality for the value. So I always have that in mind, when I'm helping make wine or selling wine or buying wine, it's always about value for me. So, there are other great producers. Like there's this incredible female winemaker, Chiara Boschke, and she just keeps getting 100 point after 100 point after 100 point. And her 2016 Via Nuova, was one of the best Barolos I've ever had in my lifetime. There's just so many great wines up there. And I was just there not too long ago in November, and was there at the height of truffle season, which is always, a good thing to experience. My God, it was wonderful. But yeah, I would say those two wineries right now are at the top of my list, Cascina Adelaide and Chiara Boschke. Nice.
Now, Jordan, when you talk about like collectors coming in, and you have a profile in your head of what a collector is, do you also think investment tied into that? You had mentioned maybe you have a case to hold and sell later? Or are you always kind of thinking that those go hand in hand?
I mean, collecting, no matter how expensive or inexpensive, collecting is expensive, because if you're buying something and not using it or consuming it, you're just sitting on cash. And so a lot of collectors that, do this as a passion, it is a heavy investment. And, the one thing, unless you have a big home with a nice wine cellar or a big wine fridge, you usually have to store offsite at a offsite wine storage facility with, that have nice cellars, and those are expensive. Just for me, for my, what I would call a little collection, I pay $300 a year. I get a family discount because I know the owner, but I think a space that I have would be normally $750 or $800. That's a lot of money and that's per year. That's just to store your wine, and so you have to add all that money that you spend into that collection. And if you are a collector and you invest you can't make any of your storage money back for sure, unless you have, 3 cases, right? Or multiple cases, especially if you want to drink some of it. So, that's how I think about what I think about when it comes to collecting and how people collect. And there's obviously people that are deep into collecting, they can afford it, so they don't really think about selling stuff off. But, I'll keep his name private, but I was a big client and friend of mine, was the president of Capitol Records for many, 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 many years. And he had a collection of, about 10,000 bottles. And when he got sick, he passed away a few years ago now. But, when he got sick and knew that he wouldn't drink anymore, he had enough value to probably the money that he made, if he did sell it, would have paid for all of his drinking for the last 30 years. So if you're a smart collector, you can kind of drink for free. So just depends on what you buy and if you're willing to sit on all that money and pay for the storage and blah, 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 And so if you think about it, especially when you think about like Bordeaux, for example, when Bordeaux comes out, if you buy it, if you pre-buy it, which so many people do now, you can get a Margaux for, $500-600, $700, if you pre-buy it, but they don't release it for another 4 or 5 years after you buy it. So, you just bought something, you bought thin air for 5 years, and if you wait and you buy it when it's on the shelf, you probably pay $1,300-1,400, which is what you usually see it for online. And, and that's right when it comes out, 10 years later, that same bottle is going to be worth $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on the vintage and et cetera, et cetera. So, you see it just in the regular purchasing market too. It's not just the collecting, so when what I'm trying to say is when a winery re-releases a vintage, it's definitely not the same price that it was when it first came out 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever vintage it is. It's double, triple, quadruple the price. And that's if the winery sells it. So there is a lot of value in collecting. And I love what you guys are doing with your platform, because I really think it will teach a lot of people about just collecting in general and how valuable it is when it's done correctly.
No, I think that's really interesting. And to me, I guess, do you see any trends from these collectors in terms of what they're buying on the ground? Like, obviously we can track stuff via LiveX and we kind of know where the macro market's moving, but it would be interesting to see if you're seeing any trends of people purchasing things that they might not have before. What are you seeing in there in the shop?
It's tough, because when people come into our store, they know what they're walking into. So, we do get a lot of questions like, do you have Sassicaia? Do you have, the big boys, do you have, Tignanello, that kind of stuff where, people always ask because it's a hot collector's item, and those wines, will always have value. So the people that do have collections and like to collect, we definitely get those questions a lot. And those same people, I introduce, Bizerno to them, just as an example. And, they're shocked by the value. And I'm sure at some point Bizerno is going to be just as expensive as Sassicaia. But, It's a great question, but I don't think it's applicable to me just because of we're not really a high volume store. But, forever until, I'm dead and we're all dead and gone and our kids are dead and gone, Bordeaux, Burgundy, and California will always be the hot topics, of what people look for. So, I mean, Bordeaux and Burgundy, they just don't make enough. And it's just crazy. The gray market, as we call it, wines that are purchased by a collector are sold, for a much higher number. And then the person that bought it sells it again. And, by the time someone could drink a Margaux, it could be sold 5 or 6 times,
Mm-hmm.
So the value of Bordeaux and Burgundy are just insane. And California is getting there, big time with, some of the more cult, harder to get producers. It's insane now, like how expensive these wines are. And it's really just because of the market. It's not even because of the winery. The winery still, for the most part, sells it, maybe they have a 2 or 3% increase every year because, with labor cost or whatever, but it's not like Harlan went from selling their wine for $500 and, now it's 2,000. It's just, they sell it for, I believe, the same price, and it's the market that's blowing it up because the demand, supply and demand. That's just how it goes.
You've already talked about, some of the ways, going back to the beginning of the conversation when we discussed elevating the retail experience. If you look, 5-10 years down the line, are there more things that you're looking to accomplish it's still talking the retail space to help push the industry forward and either make it more accessible or, drive the customer experience forward? Have you thought about what 5-10 years down the line looks like as you push the envelope there?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I a lot of it has to do with of what I would want to see is obviously going to be a struggle with, especially in California, with regulation. But, I really think that liquor and wine, they need to be able to be like tasted, before being purchased, And so at Boutellier, we don't do it right now because it's hard to get people. But, for a while we had tasting menus, where people could, pick a bottle that they wanted to try. Obviously not something that is like Sassicaia or like crazy like that, but, anything under $250, if they were going to, purchase a case or whatever, and they wanted to try it, we would Coravan it and include it in our, our tasting options on the tasting menus. So I really think that people should have the opportunity to try wine because that's why people go to wineries, So I think the retail experience on everyone's level, which I'm sure the wineries would support, by the way, give a bottle or two, that we could Coravan over time. But I really think that, to educate people more and to have more conversations about wine, especially inside of the retail stores, if customers are able to taste it, I think it would generate even more sales and create more demand, which is a good thing, because if you think about, they don't really do it anymore, especially now after COVID. But, when I growing up as a kid, every other aisle, there was a person there with a little table and with samples. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
You go in a grocery store and like you can almost eat a full meal just by trying samples.
At Trader Joe's, you can ask them to open any bottle for you, and they'll let you taste the wine.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
There, yeah, it's pretty neat.
Back in the day when we were growing up, you could try a lot of things. I mean, that was the way of marketing, PR and marketing back then. There was no social media, Instagram, all that stuff. And so, but even with social media, it's like you can't. It's great marketing because the name, but you still don't know what it tastes like, and at the end of the day, if you see something on Instagram, maybe you'll buy it once, to try it, but you're buying one bottle, and if you don't like it, you're not gonna buy it again. If people do sample it and they love it, maybe you'll sell 12 bottles, So I don't know. I think there's pros and cons, but I really think that 5 to 10 years from now, to answer your question, I think there should be more focus on all retailers, finding a economical way to allow people to try the wine. And like I said, it could also come out of the marketing budgets of the wineries because people travel to the wineries and taste the wine, and that's in their marketing budget. So, they can always send a bottle or two to their best retailers, It doesn't have to be every store, obviously, but I think that would be really cool. But the regulation behind that is actually pretty heavy, pretty deep. So, there would need to be a lot that's changed to allow that to happen.
Cool. Well, diving in there, then I think those are like most of our questions. For me, I guess my last question is back on kind of the wine nerd side of things. What regions that are kind of emerging, or producers that are emerging, have you been really getting into that you think are some of the, outside of Spain, maybe some of the best values? I don't know if it's somewhere down like Sicily, or if there's a lesser known producer in a region that's, already really big. What are you feeling on that value side of things? Like if we're looking at that 25-30 range and budget.
Yeah. I mean, there are some great producers here in California that are starting to produce out of like the Lodi area.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of wines that you see now, they don't really have a specific region. They're just called California, wine, because they kind of pull from Lodi and Paso and like different areas. And I mean, that's allowed. You just can't name a specific region on there. So, when you see like a California wine that and the region just says California, it could really be from anywhere. But there's a lot of good value wines that are being labeled just as California now that are really, really miraculous, to be honest, for the price. I mean, just really incredible value. And like we serve one of these style wines by the glass at Tess. It's called Cult, CULT, funny enough, because I like Cult wine. And it's mostly produced in Lodi. I mean, most 80%, 90% of the grapes are from Lodi. But the owner of this, I don't know if I want to like tell this story because I'm afraid that now it's going to like sell out like crazy. But I believe the owner of the winery, or maybe it's the winemaker. I don't remember offhand, but I believe it's the owner. He has a few vineyards in Beckstoffer, a few rows of Beckstoffer vines. And I believe all of the grapes that are not used in whatever wine he produces using those grapes, he puts into the Cult wine.
Wow.
Because instead of throwing them in the garbage, he uses them as value grapes and just adds it, to the Lodi fruit. And, this wine is just absolutely incredible for under $20, retail. It'll blow your socks off because the finish is crazy. Like you would get from a $500 cab, and we serve it by the glass, and it's just absolutely delicious. So something like that is really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, hopefully some of our listeners are familiar with Beckstoffer. One of the NFTs we did with a Sonoma producer. They're based in Sonoma, but they have some Napa-based wines, and they had some from Beckstoffer. So I think people will be familiar.
Yeah, I mean, but to get like a little bit of that Beckstoffer quality in a wine like that is crazy good value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's like pulling from, I don't know. I mean, the first growth vineyards can expand. I don't want to put on the parallel of like DRC, but it's like basically pulling from one of these Grand Cru vineyards and just putting it in a village wine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining. I think those are all my things. Where can you share exactly where Tess is again, just in case anybody wants to visit when they're out here? Tess in the bottle shop.
Yeah. Tess is in West Hollywood on the corner of Sunset and La Cienega next to Fred Siegel. Been there 4 years and look forward to many, many more.
Yeah, I can attest. It's a beautiful space. So everybody should visit when they come out here. But thanks again, Jordan. We appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jordan.